edition of Mondays in Midtown. I'm Mark Zinn. We are a week away from the midterm elections, and we have this story covered like white on rice. From races that are drawing national attention, like the Missouri Senate race, to local and state elections, like Amendment 3. Today's program will profile key races that you, the voter, will see on the November 2nd ballot. One race we've been following closely is the 3rd District congressional race between Ed Martin and the incumbent Congressman Russ Carnahan. Earlier this month, we talked with Mr. Martin about his plans to unseat a member of the Carnahan family in a district that hasn't elected a Republican since the 1940s. This week, we caught up with the third-term incumbent. Here is Congressman Russ Carnahan's interview. On the other side of the highway here is the Chrysler plant. We are at UAW Local 136, and that's where we talked with Congressman Russ Carnahan. Congressman Carnahan, thanks for coming on Mondays in Midtown.
Yeah, good to be with you.
What issues are driving your re-election campaign?
Well, the economy. We're growing out of the deepest and longest recession in a generation. And young people today, they've got the added challenge. The unemployment rate has especially hit young people. Many are staying in school longer, which of course is going to help them ultimately. But it's a real challenge for young people today. That's one of the other things that we've been working on related to young people. It had the biggest reforms in the student loan program, also in a generation, to help bring the cost down and to really help the affordability. So, by increasing the size of grants, by helping with the interest rates, I think those important reforms have made a big difference to help people stay in school at this tough time.
Sure. You voted for the stimulus package this past year. Do you think that's working to help to boost the economy?
Well, it's worked on several fronts. Number one, the economy was right at an economic cliff. And economists from left to right and in between, including John McCain's chief economist, Mark Zandi, all said if we don't do a package like this, we would likely go into a full-scale depression. So number one, we prevented that. Number two, it made some major national investments to save and create jobs in the short term and help us have a stronger economy in the long term, like investments in infrastructure, investments in broadband technologies, things that are going to help the economy be stronger in the long run. And we've seen evidence of that around, you can't drive around St. Louis, for example, without seeing orange cones and construction everywhere. Many of those are Recovery Act dollars at work here in our community. And another example, in terms of St. Louis being really a science-driven, innovation-driven community, we've got a chance to be one of the international leaders in biofuels. The Danforth Plant Science Center, working with other scientists in the region, is leading a national coalition to help advance biofuels and get those to market. So a lot of things have happened here, but the rest of the story is we've had 9 straight months of economic job growth in the private sector, but unemployment is still flat, and we still have a lot of work to do.
So what's your jobs plan then? How do you get people back to work?
I've had over 50 meetings with business leaders around the St. Louis region, and come up with a regional jobs initiative, starting with tax cuts. We've already instituted tax cuts for 95% of Americans, 6 different tax cuts for small businesses. We also have addressed the issue of small business lending. The biggest complaint I hear from small businesses that want to hire, that want to expand, is that credit's too tight. And so we closed the tax loopholes for companies that were sending jobs overseas, use that savings to invest in the small business lending program so that lending through SBA, through community banks, can go to work here and help small businesses and entrepreneurs here that want to grow their business.
I'm glad you brought up the tax base. Are you for extending the Bush-era tax cuts?
I'm for a permanent extension for the middle-class tax cuts, which would cover about 98% of Americans. That's something I think we should do now. Beyond that, I think we have to see how the economy grows, because the price tag for the other piece of it is over $700 billion that right now would have to be lumped onto the deficit, and I don't think that's a prudent thing to do right now. So I think the focus needs to be on those middle-class tax cuts.
Sure. With the stimulus package, you just talked about alternative energy sources, the biofuel. Ed Martin, we interviewed a few weeks ago, he came on Mondays in Midtown, and he said that he's been very critical, rather, of the $107 million stimulus cash check, he said, that was given to your brother Tom, who's in alternative energy. Did you know that these kind of payments would be made when you voted for the stimulus package, like these kind of large sum payments to alternative energy sources?
Well, first of all, we have to consider the source. Ed Martin is personally invested in big oil with over $100,000 in big oil stocks personally, and his party has been in bed with big oil repeatedly and trying to block investments in renewable American power. And finally, this is a guy that will say or do anything and peddle this tired old politics of disinformation to try to get elected. So, number one, consider the source. Number two, look at the facts. The facts are the renewable energy tax credit was passed during the first George Bush term. It's been extended multiple times throughout the years with bipartisan support. Over 1,000 companies have used the tax credit, and no member of Congress has the ability to steer or direct how that works. If a company builds a qualified project, they're eligible for the credit. That's the way it works. And Mr. Martin and the Republicans know that, but they are ignoring that.
What does it mean to get the UAW endorsement, especially with the Fenton plant just across the road that closed a few years back, I guess a year or so ago? Mm-hmm. What does it mean to get their endorsement?
Well, they're a group that they're all about, keeping a strong U.S. manufacturing base. That's what made this country. That's what made, frankly, this whole St. Louis region. But we have a big hole in our economy here when this plant closed. And, I'm very angry with the way that happened and that we lost jobs to Canada and Mexico because we didn't leave any stone unturned working with the administration, working with the new Chrysler, old Chrysler, Fiat, to try to say, look, we've got the state-of-the-art facility. We've got some of the best workers in the industry with the best production records anywhere and quality records. We'll stack them up to compete anywhere. But that didn't work. So the plant has been being cleaned up, repurposed, remarketed, and I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able to get manufacturing back there. And it's my hope we can get some new generation manufacturing and potentially even a new generation vehicle or components here that would be ideal for this location. So that's what we're working on.
Well, I appreciate you coming on Mondays in Midtown.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure.
Good to be with you.
Talk to you soon. Now we'll have much more on next week's election coming up in a little bit. But first, we recently visited the studios of KTVI Fox 2 in Maryland Heights. Watch this fun segment.
I stopped taking lessons when I had mono in 4th grade. Killed my parents. My mother finally sold the piano 2 years ago.
His mother may have sold his piano, but Fox 2's Elliot Weiler could be seen co-anchoring the 11 a.m. newscast, as well as filing the Contact 2 consumer reports.
Consumer stuff is fun because you get to do stories that a lot of people are talking about, stories that affect their lives, the news you can use stuff. It's not necessarily as kind of depressing or morose as the fires, accidents, murders that we cover in the general news cycle. The other nice thing is that I typically get to spend a little more time doing it because the stories don't air every day at a specific time. We do a daily consumer news beat, but that's kind of the business and consumer news of the day. The other stuff that we do for 9 o'clock, there's a little bit more time to develop those stories, which is nice.
I think the most important question is, who's your favorite anchor at Fox 2 that wears ties usually?
Tom O'Neill. Hey. Boy, there was a long pause there. He had his ear tuned in there. Who's he going to say? Who's he going to say?
Oh, I'll put him on the spot here.
Elliot Davis, of course, a distant second. All right, you're in the Fox 2 studios now, KTVI out here in beautiful Maryland Heights. Welcome. Good to see you here. This is our main studio. Reasonably spacious. Behind you, if you'd like, is the green screen for the weather wall. Every TV station has them. We do here. Kind of go through this in some semblance of order. Here's our big weather center. Dave Murray.
Hello, Dave.
Hey, Dad. I'm learning how to do Facebook. Driving me crazy.
Comes in. Twitter next.
No, I don't think so.
This is our tree position, so we can sort of stand here and have various things behind us.
Like you'll see your Contact 2 report later.
Contact 2 reports are often done from here. That's right. Just gives the newscast a different look. The main anchor desk is here. Coming up, I guess, Tom O'Neill and Andy Murphy will be here in a few minutes. Another position here, we call this the sports wall. Sports is typically done here, with that behind you, just to kind of shake it up. They do a lot of that on the news edge at 10 o'clock as well. If you want to just turn around there, we've got the robotic high-definition cameras.
Makes everyone look good in HD, right?
Not everyone, but for it with enough help, it can sort of work. Yeah. So so that's kind of the way the studio is laid out. Although there are Channel 11 graphics on the screen here right now, the Channel 11 studio is in a different part of the building. None of their newscasts are actually done from here, with the exception of the noon news. The green screen is used for the headlines. But if you're watching at home, you would think that it's Channel 11 that has their graphics and all of that stuff.
And as Elliot told you, KPLR 11 shares resources and studio space with Fox 2. So naturally, this means we caught up with News 11 sports director Rich Gould to get his take on the upcoming Billiken basketball season. We're here with well-known sports expert Rich Gould. Rich, how does the SLU basketball team looking this year?
Well, they've had a setback, as you guys know, at SLU, but I can't wait for the season. We televise some of their games. I hope we get a ton of them. Last year, I think we did 5 SLU games. The schedule's not out yet, but as many games as we can televise, I want to. Without Mitchell, it'll be tough. Of course, Willie Reed's going to go on someplace else. But it is a good team. They won a ton of games last year. They weren't expected to finish 4th in the A-10. They did. They're only going to learn from it, and I can't wait to watch Billiken's basketball.
Do you think we may be able to get into the tournament this year?
Yes, I do. I really do. I think you got a chance to win the Atlantic 10. It'd be tough. Xavier is always good, and there are some other teams. You know, when you're looking at the Rhode Islands of the world, Dayton certainly, they always get good athletes. But this team is very, very good. Jarris knows his basketball, so yeah, I think there's a chance.
Thank you. And again, that was our good friend Rich Gould with the basketball update. Stick around for more Mondays in Midtown. We'll be right back after the break. And welcome back. Well, as promised, we're going to talk more about politics because November 2nd is the midterm election. And here joining me now is J.P. Johnson, Mondays in Midtown senior political correspondent. Good to see you, J.P.
Always.
Let's talk about some of these races. First, the Senate race here in Missouri. Roy Blunt versus Robin Carnahan. Roy Blunt is a U.S. Congressman in Southwest Missouri, and Robin Carnahan, she is currently the Missouri Secretary of State. What's going on in this race?
Well, I mean, essentially, we have two political families, well-known political families in Missouri. Last year, when Obama was, somewhat popular in Missouri and widely popular across the United States, her numbers were doing quite well. She was beating Roy Blunt in the poll numbers by an average of 10%. Now you see the opposite shift. Republicans have taken over in many of the poll numbers around the country. You're going to see a big wave election this year because of some of the unpopular measures that Obama has pushed. And by real clear politics standards, she's not breaching 43%, and Roy Blunt is winning on an average of 10.3%.
So you think it's Roy Blunt?
Roy Blunt all the way.
All right, let's go to the next one. U.S. House. First of all, let's start District 1, Lacey Clay's district. Democratic stronghold.
Lacey Clay.
Let's move on then. District 2, Todd Akin.
Todd Akin.
Let's move on. District 3. Now, this has been turning some heads. Earlier in the show, we brought you an interview with Congressman Russ Carnahan, who's the incumbent, third-term incumbent for that district. Ed Martin, again, giving him a run for his money. What do you think's going on in that race, and does Ed Martin have a real shot?
Ed Martin does not have a shot, but he's certainly making the race interesting. The one thing Republicans are very good at doing, they spread Democrats thin. They can raise money from any group, any interest group, any business faction from across the United States. You look at American Crossroads with Karl Rove. You look at some of the other PACs, plus the RNC, the RGA. So they know this race is a highlight race that if they can take this race, then it would be a bellwether race across the nation. Now, Carnahan has a very famous name in Missouri. He's an ineffective campaigner. He's not the greatest talker. He's not the greatest retail politician. But he has a big name in a big Democratic area. He's going to win.
We'll have to watch that one for sure. State auditor race. This is really the only statewide state race, if you will. Susan Monte, the incumbent here. Pretty interesting story. A video released a few weeks ago, Margarita Monte. Pretty good video. I enjoyed it. Makes me kind of want to vote for her. And then her challenger is Tom Schweid, who I guess had some history with the Republican Party. She's running on a platform that she's the only accountant in this race. Is that a good platform to run on?
Well, it depends. I mean, this is not a year where your credentials are necessarily the end-all, be-all. This is a year where you should focus on the voters, whether it's nationally or whether it's statewide or whether it's local. It's very good that she's a CPA because let's not forget Claire McCaskill. She was not a CPA, and she served from 1999 to 2007. And in fact, she was the only non-CPA in the past 35 years to actually be state auditor. So it's actually good that we do have a public accountant, but it's not something that you want to publicize, especially somebody with as much experience as Schweitz have. Let's not forget he was the chief of staff for John Danforth, who is still a very popular former U.S. Senator. He worked in the Bush administration in the State Department, so he is not someone without experience. Plus, he's a Harvard-educated lawyer himself.
What do you think is going to happen in the election? You saw the poll results this morning's Post-Dispatch. Pretty close race.
Right. Well, it's surprisingly close when you think about Missouri in terms of our state dynamic. We're a state where we will vote for Democrats statewide, but we will send Republicans to Congress. The thing that interests me the most was the fact that Schweitz was running at 40%. She was running at 37%, Susan Monty, but you have 21% not sure. In a race where you're going to have a big wave for Republicans, normally the party out of power, those numbers usually break for the opponent. So
it'd be another close one to watch then. Let's move on to Proposition B. Monday's Midtown producer Manning Huntingford has this package for us.
What Proposition B does is to ensure that the dogs at large-scale dog breeding facilities are being treated humanely. What we're asking for is basic, modest, and common-sense care. There are many breeders here in Missouri, even large-scale breeders, who are properly caring for their dogs, and they're not going to be impacted by this measure. But there also are many breeders who are not treating their dogs well. And for example, our organization released a report several weeks ago that demonstrated that there are licensed facilities here in Missouri who are treating their dogs in a really horrendous way. The report used the summaries and results of reviewing State Department of Agriculture inspection reports, as well as U.S. Department of Agriculture inspection reports of licensed facilities in Missouri, and illustrated a number of problems. One facility, for example, had a veterinary program that had been recommended where the dogs who no longer were able to produce puppies adequately were going to be clubbed to death. There also are severe issues with space, with dogs that are being kept in tiny little cages for their whole lives. Sometimes those cages have wire floors, and when dogs are kept on those types of flooring systems, it causes a lot of injuries to their feet and paws. Prop B will address those kinds of situations.
Proposition B is the limiting of number of dogs that you may own. There's also no putting of one cage on top of another unless you're a veterinarian, as well as a few other exemptions. All solid surfaces on all kennels, again with veterinarian exemptions. Pen sizes will have to be increased 5 and 6 times the current size. 24-hour-a-day unfettered access to outside activity, regardless of the outside activity that your dogs already receive. All, and that means all, ailments and concerns need veterinarian checks. Lastly, a Class C misdemeanor for any animal cruelty act will be issued for any infraction.
Prop B will set up clear standards, and if individual facilities are not following those standards, then there's a criminal penalty that could be used to ensure that they either have the incentive to comply with the law, or if they're found in violation, then they could be accused of a crime.
Good work, Amanda. JPJ, what's going to happen with Prop B?
I think Prop B will actually pass. I think the ballot measure will be closer than people think. And this is what I have to say about Prop B from a personal standpoint. We sent Michael Vick to jail a couple years ago with his indictment for what he did with the dog ring that he had out in Virginia and that he had out in Maryland. And supposedly that was supposed to create this wave where we were supposed to crack down on some puppy mills and dog fighting and some of the other abuses that we have around this country. So if we're going to get serious about dogfighting, if we're going to get serious about some of the tax measures, if we're going to get serious about cutting down on some of the living conditions, if we're going to get serious about where we purchase our pets, how they're actually taken care of, then this is a measure that we certainly want to start with. I do get, however, from a small business perspective, especially in a down economy, while some individuals say that the new regulations are going to be a tax burden on many of these small business owners that breed more than 50 dogs to subsidize many of their costs. But at the same time, we have to put the safety and the viability of the animal first, and we also have to put our personal integrity first before we put our business ventures on whether or not we treat dogs with the quality of life that they should actually have.
Interesting. Amendment 3 has to deal with real estate taxes, and we talked with Rihanna C.W. Meyer from Coldwell Bankers Premier Group just a little bit ago. Rihanna C.W. Meyer is a board member of the Missouri Association of Realtors. Why should college students worry about voting yes on Amendment 3?
Well, I mean, even if they aren't homeowners themselves, they probably will be one day in the future. Missouri is only one of 13 states that does not have a transfer tax. In Missouri, we do pay property taxes. So we're already paying taxes every year on our homes. This is a double taxation by having sales tax. So for their future, hopefully they'll be future homeowners. This is important.
Has there been much opposition to Amendment 3?
The language is very confusing the way that it's written, so I don't know that there's a lot of opposition once people understand how the amendment is worded. Right now, you have to vote yes in order to say no to new taxes. So a lot of people, when they see anything to do with taxes, their knee-jerk reaction is to vote no because they don't want new taxes, and the language is a little confusing.
What sparked the realtors to put Amendment 3 on the ballot?
They tried to, the Missouri Senate Missouri Congress tried to get it passed without it going a vote to the people. Missouri Association of Realtors, along with local boards, fought heavily, got petitions signed this summer in order to be able to get this on the ballot so that Missourians would have a right to vote on whether they wanted this tax. It was a very long, hard fight. We got it on the ballot, and it's very important that people get out and vote, even though these are the midterm elections, to get out and vote. This is a very important amendment for our future.
Wow, that was pretty cool. What's going to happen with Amendment 3?
I think Amendment 3 will pass, but I think it will pass for the wrong reasons, and here's why. When you think about a constitution should not have tax provisions within them, especially not a state like Missouri. There are 37 states that have this sort of tax in their constitution. St. Louis actually doesn't need it. We have a Hancock Amendment, which will actually put a cap on the amount of money that we can actually have from tax subsidies that actually deal with real estate. Now, what some people are saying is that the cap will increase by some $15 million if this tax does not pass, if the state does want to impose maybe a 1% to 2% tax like they have in Delaware, like they have in Pennsylvania. But we have to remember, we have a Republican Congress in Missouri. There is no way that they're going to levy a new tax increase, especially when Missouri has the 27th highest foreclosure rate within the country. 1 out of every 250 homes are foreclosed on in Missouri. So I don't think this measure is necessary. I think it sets a bad precedent, but I think the policy in and of itself is a good policy because we do not need more taxes in this country.
We will keep our eye on Amendment 3. There's no challenger in the state representative district here at SLU and other elections you can read up on. But next week, we'll take you inside Proposition A, which is going to be a fun battle indeed. Well, our own Taylor McDonald went on the streets to find out what students think about the upcoming election. And again, that was Taylor McDonald, Monday's Midtown producer, with that segment out in the streets with the reactions. Joining us now with his reactions and some analysis of the race is our own senior political analyst and commentator, Brett Kostreski. Hi, Brett.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. What's going to happen come November 2nd at the national level and all the way down to the local level?
Well, this is an amazing election year, and it's very different from the other big Republican takeover in 1994 in a lot of ways. And when you play the numbers game, it's hard to predict, especially in such a volatile year. Just the past 4 years ago, we saw big Democrat gains preceded by big Republican gains. So the electorate is very confused and kind of just misdirected anger in general. But when you look at the Republicans in 94, that was a takeover of 54 seats. And the mood right now is definitely angrier and a little bit more vitriolic than we saw in 94. So it could be bigger or it could be smaller. I think Republicans are definitely going to take the House of Representatives. But regardless what the number is, this election is still definitely a much more significant shift in American politics than 1994 or even 2006 and 2008.
You talked about the House. What about the Senate? Any chance for Republicans taking over the Senate in this midterm election?
I do think it's a possibility, however, definitely not set in stone, and I do think it's unlikely. Republicans are losing ground in Senate races just because Senate races tend to be more moderate and there are fewer of them. So the races have been tightening up over the past couple of weeks just as Democrats begin to poll a little bit better. So again, still a possibility, but unlikely.
Real quickly, we were talking about it earlier. What's going to happen with the 3rd Congressional District? I still think it's a race to watch.
I definitely think so too, and I've said it before. I think there is a few maybe 5, maybe more points, depending on the race, bias in favor of the Republicans in these polls. I think Republicans are going to do better than the polls say they are, and the fact that Ed Martin's even close against Russ Carnahan is proof that there is going to be a change. There could be a change there. I think Ed Martin is doing much better than a lot of people predicted, and that race could actually be a bellwether for the rest of the country on Election Day. If he could pull off an upset there, you could see some upsets in maybe some other House or Congressional or Senate races that day.
Well, we'll be watching, and we'll be there on election night, covering different parties, so make sure you watch that sometime soon after the election. Right now, spotlight on St. Louis, and it's the Fox Theater. Now, there are many cool people that work at the Fox, but the coolest person lies behind this stage door, which is usually off limits, unless you're Mondays in Midtown crew. Dennis Cordia.
Oh my gosh, there's been so many of them. I got about 70, 80, 90 pictures taken with certain people here, the different shows that have been here, you know. Robert Wagner, he was a real nice guy. He did love letters here. Mm-hmm. And who else? Gosh, now I can't even think of their names.
Jerry Seinfeld, pretty cool.
Yeah, he was a nice guy. He was friendly. But Ray Romano, he was a real nice guy. First year he came, we got a picture with him, and he came back another time. Then he's going to sign my picture. So let's see, what am I going to put? He said, well, 3 years later and no new jokes. That's how he signed his picture.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, he was a really nice guy. And Valerie Harper, she was very nice. I used to drive her back and forth to her hotel after the show was over.
Cool.
So yeah, she was really friendly.
Now, sometimes though, these concerts can get pretty hectic, and everyone wants to come backstage, right? How do you handle those people?
Well, you just lock the doors. You lock the doors, and if they don't have a pass, they don't come through. But they're the most hectic shows you do back here, the rock shows. But you got to take the good with the bad, right?
Yeah, that's right. What's your favorite? When you walk through the brass doors of the Fox Theater, it's hard not to notice the rather unique, let's call it fabulous, interior of a place that was built in 1929. That's when movie pioneer William Fox built the theater on Grand, which he did to showcase the films of the Fox Film Corporation. Now, a really cool thing about the Fox Theater is all the murals backstage that depict some of the shows that have come here in the past 15, 20, 25 years. Some of the cool ones include all of those ones you see on the wall, plus Stomp. That's pretty funny because you're going up the stairs, as is Chicago. One of my favorite bands that should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's The King and I, Peter, Paul, and Mary. The Sound of Music, so much stuff. Now, a really cool part is Arthur, obviously. He is the aardvark and a good show, but the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame banner that has all these different great autographs from Jeff Beck to many more. Now, another cool thing is this one, the Fish autographs that are backstage. The elevator is even depicted here with a lot of different signatures, and this guy. You can always take a tour of the Fox Theater. Just go to their website, fabulousfox.com. This Thursday, the Great Issues Committee is presenting a speaker here on campus. Tim Wise will speak about racism. Join him. 7 p.m., the Bush Student Center, Wool Ballrooms, doors open at 6:15. We have one viewer mail, of course, folks. You can write to us here at mondaysinmidtown@gmail.com. Do you have an idea? Great. You want to be part of the show? Awesome. If you have any comment, positive or negative, maybe some viewer pictures or a video clip, send it to mondaysinmidtown@gmail.com. This one comes from Paul, letterer. Mark, I'm interested in helping out with the show. Well, we'll see what happens with that one. Mizzou had a great game over the weekend, I'm sure you know. Go Tigers. That's been our show for this week. Remember, Mondays in Midtown at gmail.com. Good night, everyone! Drive safely! Now we'll have much more on next week's election coming up in a little bit, but first we recently visited the studios of KTVI Fox 2. What? All right. Fox. Got really excited there. Let's try that again. Whenever I see Matt's face, smile not say. I didn't know what to do. Wow, the Oval Office! Oh, wow! Hello!
I know you're there, so...
Hello, America!
Whenever you feel like it.
Tornado warning!
See ya.
It's for you.